Hi everyone, good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ana Moya. I'm a professional development specialist with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, and today we have with me.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan Crum and I'm also a professional development specialist here at ISAC. And today we are going to be talking about college visits. So college visits right now with this strenuous time have been put on hold, but know that college visits are still an option for many students. So those current juniors who are rising seniors as they wrap up their junior year, this time often is their first time that they are starting their college going process. And one of those ways is which is doing college visits. And I was a student when I was in college. Before I was in college, I did a college visit. I was actually a tour guide in college as well. And so Anna and I are going to talk about today just our experiences, whether or not we did a college visit, and how questions that we have seen or questions that we may have had on our own college visits and questions that I got as a tour guide. So I'll start off. So with college visits, you can take a college visit pretty much anywhere, actually. You can visit your 2-year or 4-year institution that's near you. You can take a college visit out of state. Because of COVID right now, while in-person college visits are not an option, some institutions have gone virtually, and that meaning that they offer a virtual tour of their campus on their school's website. And so that way, students can still see what the campus layout looks like, where different buildings are, to still get that sense of being on campus. While there's nothing like looking at a beautiful quad in the middle of fall with all the colors, there's nothing like that. But knowing that a student can still do a virtual tour and still somewhat get that same feeling is just as important. So Anna, do you want to start us off with some questions maybe that we got that we advise to give students when they're doing college visits?
Yeah, one of the biggest things, I just want to mention as well that you don't have to be a junior to start visiting colleges. You can schedule these visits. Well, once campuses do open, you can schedule them at any time. You could take the virtual tours at any time. So you could be in middle school, you could have your students be in elementary school, and it's a really fun activity. And they start to like get to know the colleges as well. So if you have a college near you, whether it be a 2-year or 4-year campus, I highly suggest that you take advantage of that. But yeah, some of the questions, this is more like some of the questions you want to keep in mind or you may want to ask if you're taking a college tour. For example, if you know you're going to go into a specific major, you might want to you when you're going on a college tour, you might of the campus, you might want to ask like, is there a specific building? Like my school had a specific building for those students who were like in any science major. There was an arts building. Then there's like kind of like those like liberal arts building where all of the general education classes were taken. So maybe asking if you know you're gonna go into, let's say, what was the example we were talking about yesterday, Megan? If you were going into nursing, what was the building that your school had?
Yeah, so when I was a tour guide at my college, if I knew what the student was wanting to major in, say it was nursing, I would show them a nursing simulation lab. And so some institutions have different labs and different really key things for that they use for their students that makes them shine in many senses. And so at where I went to school at Aurora, we had a nursing simulation lab, and I always made sure to pass by that lab even if it made the tour a little at 5 minutes extra long. I tried to make sure to go swing back by that lab so that they could see this is where they will be as well in due time. And so that was one thing definitely that I tried to make sure to do, whether not necessarily if they're a nursing major, but many institutions have different labs for other majors. So if you're going into science or going into exercise science, right? Those come with clinicals. And another thing about institutions, they depending if you're going into athletic training, they want to see those individuals may want to see where they work with the athletes, right? So that would be in some sort of gym, near the weight room potentially, or where they ice them down. And so that's something I always tried to do as well if we had an athletic training major to take them there.
Yeah, and I apologize. We're going back and forth and we're kind of muting ourselves just so that we don't echo, just because we're obviously in two different places. But also, some things, just speaking of those athletes, some things that you might want to keep in mind as well that you might want to ask if that's something that you're interested in is there a gym facility in on campus, or do they have, if there's no gym on campus, do they have a partnership with a gym nearby or anything like that that would help you guys cut costs? And I guess like we could talk about questions that you can ask that can potentially help you cut costs. For example, if you are at a school that has multiple campuses and you know you're gonna need to be traveling between campus, one, do you have to pay more multiple parking? If you got to pay for a parking permit, if you have a car on campus, you have to pay for multiple parking permits for each campus, or do they have a shuttle as well that maybe you don't have to walk to the next one or take your car out of the parking lot and drive to the next campus? As if they have a shuttle, if they're going to be going in between campuses as well. Like I already mentioned, like having a gym on campus, like that is really helpful if fitness is one of the things that is important to you. Having a gym and then knowing the rules. Sometimes there might be a gym, but only the athletes have access to it. So those are some of the questions you want to be asking, or what are kind of like the conditions to using the gym facilities in the space.
Yeah, so with that, as Anna mentioned, having a shuttle to and from multiple campuses. And so that brings us to parking. So parking sometimes for many students is a hassle sometimes, depending exact as it depends also where you go to school. So I went to school in the suburbs and Anna went to school in the city. And so we have different experiences of how we handled parking. So at my institution where I went, we were allowed to have a car on campus. We were able to park on a street and leave our cars and didn't have to move, but we were also able to park in parking lots that they had built. For some institutions, that may not be the case. So in Anna's case, right, as she's going to explain, she went to school in the city, and so her mode of transportation was a little bit different, but she may have had to walk farther, or where at my institution, I could easily walk across campus in a couple of minutes, but walking in the city is a little bit longer.
For me, it was a similar experience. I went to a small campus, so I didn't really have to walk too much. I did have to pay for a parking permit. There was some street parking, but also know the rules for the street parking, because you don't want to get tickets, or you don't want to know that everyone's using the street parking, and then you get there 30 minutes before your class and then you can't find parking, so you're late to class. So just kind of knowing like the surrounding area just with the campus. Don't just ask about what's in the campus, what's out of the campus as well, so that you can know those rules. So with parking, that's one of the big ones. If you, depending on where you are, I know if you are in the city of Chicago, sometimes the colleges offer you kind of the Ventra card, so that you could use the public transportation. If you are out in the suburbs or your school is in another area and they don't offer that, maybe, or they don't have the same transportation as the city of Chicago, ask them about if there's any about the public transportation, and if there is anything that's included in your tuition and fees that would help you get around without needing a car or a bike or even walking around.
Yeah, so public transportation is definitely one way in which students can get around campus. So it's one definitely a good question to be asking when you're doing those virtual tours, or when you're those juniors who do once they get to go to visit in person on campuses, hopefully in the fall. Some other good questions to be asking is, what's the class size of the university? And so sometimes students want to know about the entertainment of the school, the nightlife, or the overall kind of environment of the school. But some things that they forget about is to ask about the class size. So for individuals who work with students who are juniors or students that are younger and want to get see what a college campus looks like, some students get really overwhelmed with trying to figure out where to go to school, whether they want to go in or out of state, if they want to stay a small, kind of large institution versus a large institution. So one way I always suggested to students was when I was working with seniors specifically, I asked them a few questions, and I did this as a tour guide as well. I would ask them, okay, do you want to stay in or out of state? And this helps narrow and kind of help the student decide, okay, what really matters to me and where do I want to go? And so I would ask that question, do you want to go in or go out of state or stay in state? And often sometimes the answer would be like, I know I want to go out of state. Okay, great. Many juniors right now, I imagine, before COVID or potentially still now, are getting a lot of mail. And institutions are sending them lots and lots of things to come and visit, to check out their majors. So if you have a student that knows that, yes, I know I want to go out of state, then start looking at those things that are coming in the mail. Hopefully in the fall, we'll be able to do college fairs. College fairs do happen, which is also a great way to get to know an institution. But the next thing on the college visit, if you know that a student wants to stay in state, then asking, do they want us to go to a 2-year or a 4-year institution? So whether that be, again, a 2-year would be a local community college or a trade and vocational school, and then a 4-year institution would be like where Anna and I went at Dominican and Aurora, where we were both small private institutions, and that was something that mattered to us, right? And so with that came with that class size. So at Aurora, class size I think was only about 20, where if you go to U of I down in Urbana, and they have a huge lecture hall and about 40,000 kids at any given moment. So that's something important to ask on a college visit. When I was a tour guide, I often got asked, what was the class size? Did we have lecture halls? How well do we get to know the professors? Was there a TA? That might be important to them, to that student, of whether they actually want that interaction with the professor and not just their TA.
Megan, can you say what a TA is?
Yeah, a TA is a teaching assistant, and so a TA helps the professor grade. They sometimes will teach class if a professor is doing research potentially, and they are focusing on the research. The professor will teach a class, but their TA is there to help aid them essentially. And they may teach a class. They help the students potentially be tutored if needed. TAs are only really at large institutions that I have seen. I didn't have any TAs at my institution where I went. But Anna, did you have any TAs where you were at school? Yeah, no.
At my institution, it was sort of a similar experience. It was smaller classes. That was something that I knew beforehand um, when I was kind of choosing the school I wanted to go to, that I wanted smaller classes because I do like that one-on-one interaction with the teachers or the professors. So yeah, my experience was similar. I didn't really have any experiences with TAs.
Yeah. So another question that I always got as a tour guide was, did I do a college visit? And I actually did a college visit before I visited college, where I went to my institution for my undergrad. Anna has a different story than I do, but I did do a college visit, and it really was able to solidify for me that that's where I knew I wanted to end up. But Anna has a different story.
For me, it was way different. I didn't really do any college visits. I did love my campus. I did love my school. So I was fortunate enough to have a good experience with that. But I didn't take a college visit until after I had committed to going to my school. Then I took a college visit, and I brought my dad with me just so that he could see the campus where I would be. And then once I got there, I didn't really know what questions I should be asking as a student. So I just let them take me along the facilities. And that's when I kind of realized, like, oh, I didn't realize there's a gym on campus, and I didn't realize I could use the gym, and I didn't realize I had to pay for a parking permit. Um, and then there was a really pretty auditorium, and then they were telling us about events on campus. So I'm like, oh, this is something that, in my head, I never would have thought to ask for. I'm glad that they're showing me. So even though I took the campus tour after I had already committed to the school, I did get a lot of information, useful information, once I did take it, even before the start of the year. This is why I am so go take a college tour, because you do learn so much about them. You might, we're running through some of the questions you could be asking, or you could ask about, but you might go on a college tour and there's something that we never mentioned, and it's something that tour actually has, or that campus actually offers. So it's just a neat experience overall. And I do highly recommend, especially if you're gonna be living on campus. That's gonna be the place where you're gonna spend potentially the next 4 or 5 years of your college career. If you're gonna be going to a four-year institution, so yeah, definitely ask those questions and take that tour.
So another question I had on my when I did a college visit, but when I often got as a tour guide, was what kind of activities do you have on campus? So how many clubs and organization? Is there Greek life? This is oftentimes, as many students are aware, that this is that social aspect of college, that they get to meet new people and they get to do lots of fun things oftentimes during college. I had a lot of fun in college. And so one question I used to advise students when I was a tour guide, and I always got asked, was what kind of organizations are on campus? And I would list off that we had 20 plus organizations on here at campus. And if you don't find one that you like, or you don't have, there isn't one for you, you can create your own. And so many institutions have multiple organizations to be a part of, whether that be Greek life, whether that be any honor societies. It also could be, where I went to school, there was the American Marketing Association, or the AMA. Different institutions have different clubs and organizations. And so I don't know about Anna, but I know for me, during the first week of school, my university often put on an involvement fair. And what that means is that they would have all of the clubs and organizations out and about, and you would get to basically say hello and say, okay, what do you do and where are you at? And for those college visits, when those students are going on them, they want to know about that social aspect. So asking that question of, okay, what are some of your biggest clubs? Is there a psychology club? I was a psych major and I wanted to know that. But is there maybe a biology club? Is there a athletic training club? Is there a social work club? Whatever it may be that your students looking into majoring in, it's good to ask that kind of question to know that how do they fit into that institution as well. While they may have their major and the price is affordable for the student, but also part of that fit is that social aspect. Can they thrive at the institution? But Anna, what about you? Did you join any clubs? Did you ask? What clubs did you realize were on campus after you stepped foot?
I didn't join any clubs, but I did realize that once I was on campus, clubs that were already on camp, that were already part of the university, they also held a lot of events just to be social and have free food, free events, free entertainment. So that's definitely one way, again, to cut back on costs, on like entertainment costs and also food costs if you're on campus. And then just because we were a smaller school, there weren't as many clubs as there would be at a bigger school. But I also talked to my friends while I was in school, and they went to bigger universities, and they would talk about all of the free events that they had. I also had some friends that were at community colleges, and there were events with community college as well. So this is not just part of the 4-year life. This is could be at any institution where they would have free events, or if you clubs wanted you to get to know them, they'll also have sort of like a fair, like the one you had, Megan, where in order to get to know them, they would line up, and then you could ask them questions. They could tell you a little bit about what they do. They always try to make it as fun as possible. So definitely take advantage of that. But also, along with clubs and organizations, I think one of the things that you need to keep in mind if you are planning on living around campus or on campus, if you're not going to be staying with your parents or any of that, start asking about if you're planning on living on campus, like in the dorms. Start asking kind of like what the process is. A lot of the places, they have different buildings, they have different names for it. There's going to be some buildings that might be a little nicer than the other ones, some buildings that might have AC, and others that might not. Either way, regardless, it's a fun experience just to experience it. Some schools do make it mandatory for the freshman year, for incoming freshmen to have to dorm for the first year. So asking about what the process is like, and if you are attending or planning on attend one of those institutions, kind of ask like what's going to be the best building for me to try to get in there. Understand the different parts of the process, and also kind of the rules and regulations with living on campus. But on the other hand, if you think that you don't want to live on campus, but you still want to live near campus, ask about if there's apartments nearby that give student discounts or anything like that. If there's apartments, or is there a website or a page that the students can visit in order to find some roommates to make the experience cheaper in itself. Just asking questions about what it will be like and the process like in order for you to live on campus or near campus.
Yeah, so with housing, it was often a big question when I was a tour guide that I got. How many residence halls are on campus? One question we also got was, what about our meal plans? How do we determine that? Or what's the best option for me? And so, really, all institutions offer a variety of housing options and meal plan options. So, that's a good question to ask because when I was in college, I didn't eat breakfast. I'm a big coffee drinker. And so based on that, I knew that I didn't need all of the meals that maybe that they offered, but those have different level of pricing. And so that may be a question if you're really thinking about affordability for a college. That was one thing for me. And so and many students think about that, the cost of college. How much does their meal plan cost, right? What comes in that meal plan? What comes in their housing option, right? Are they living with just one roommate, or are they living with multiple roommates? I lived with multiple roommates one year for college when I lived on campus. And so knowing that, that's going to affect how much that housing option costs, whether they have one or just multiple roommates. So then some other things that we want to talk about in terms of college visits, you can take an individualized tour if you choose to. So that's when colleges are open back up. And pre-COVID, what happens is institutions offered individual tours where you could work with a tour guide like me when I was in college, and I would take you around campus. You also can join an open house. And so an open house is a great way for juniors, even younger students, say sophomores, as Anna's talking about freshmen, the younger siblings that may go with them. To see the campus, you still get to see what a residence hall looks like. You get to meet professors, see what kind of majors they have. Oftentimes you got to eat in the dining hall and see what life would look like for you at that university. And so those are two ways you can take college visits. One would be doing an individualized visit, or you can join an open house. And some institutions are now offering virtual open houses where you can join in on Zoom and kind of bounce around to breakout rooms and, meet with admissions, talk to financial aid, ask those other questions that you may have. Or you may have no questions at all that first time around, and that's okay too. I had a lot of questions as a student, but I was a first in the family to attend college, so I had a lot of questions. But some students may not have any questions, and that's okay too. But knowing to see, okay, get that conversation rolling of where do I want to go? Do I want to stay close to home? Do I want to live on campus or off campus? What do I want to major in? Those are some good questions to be asking yourselves as students, but also asking the institution.
Along with that, once you're depending on what your studying style is, you might want to ask hours about all of the facilities. You want to ask maybe visitor hours for if you're living on campus. You might want to ask what time the library opens or closes. Maybe you like to study early in the morning and you want to hit up the library early in the morning. You might want to know that that library is going to be open for you to study in. Or maybe you're a night owl and you like to study late at night. You want to know that you're going to have a safe space for you to be able to study in, and the library is very important. Along with Megan brought up meals. She's not a breakfast person. Do they offer breakfast? Things of that sort, just knowing like the hours of the facilities on campus. Sometimes the gym, if there is a gym and it's open to all of the students, maybe there's hours that it's only open to athletes. If there's a cafeteria, if you're a big coffee drinker, if there's what kind of like restaurants are on campus, what are their opening hours or closing hours, so that just so that you best plan your day and it makes your experience that much richer on campus. Also, just talking about like what's around the campus, maybe ask about restaurants around the campus. You might not want to work on campus, but Maybe you want to work at a store, at a department store or a restaurant around the campus so that you can make some extra cash. Ask about what is in the surrounding area. So not only do you know your food options, where to eat, where to shop, but you also, if you are seeking employment or anything like that while you're in college, you are aware of those facilities.
Yeah, that's definitely a great question to ask about what's in the area. Because I went to a small private institution, we were nestled in a neighborhood. We were near a Walmart, we were near other food options. We didn't have any outside vendors, as they're known as, on campus. We only had three places to eat. And that was the dining hall, the spot, which is where you can get more of your what your normally food that you're used to, and a coffee shop. And that was it. Where I went to Northern for my grad school, and they had multiple actual vendors come in from the outside. So they had a Chipotle, and they had different food options there as well. So asking about what kind of, how close is the nearest grocery store, right? Not every student's going to eat on campus, and that's okay. But knowing what kind of grocery store, what's the closest grocery store? Is there uh, the how far is the local gas station, something like that, where they can still get around, especially if they have a car on campus or if they need that public transportation. Asking those questions about the neighborhood as well. So with college visits as well, know that you can do as many as you like, or as Anna did, she didn't do any. I only did one, and that was to where I went to school at Aurora. But it's okay if you or decide to wait, since the college visits in person have been put on hold for now. It's okay to wait till the fall, especially for those juniors right now, rising seniors. If they can go on a college visit, that's one way to really get a good feel of the institution. And it may also solidify, like, this isn't institution isn't for me either. I think sometimes we talk about how it makes you feel really, really good, but sometimes you may say, you know what, this isn't for me actually. And that kind of will help you veer a way in which that says, okay, I know that I don't want to go to a large institution. I want to stay small. Or, say like Ann and I, we went to small institutions, and that student may say, you know what, I want to go to a bigger institution. So it all depends on that college visits and the questions that you ask. And the college tour will give you the tour guide will give you lots of information, a lot of information, and oftentimes the students and parents are very overwhelmed. But know that you can always visit the school's website. You can talk to admissions at any time, and ask those questions as you go along. After you've done a college visit, you could do more than one college visit at one place. I actually gave several tours to students who had visited already once and visited again because they were trying to decide between one institution and another. Yeah, Anna, anything else we want to add before we wrap up for today?
I just want to add, along with knowing what's on campus, a tutoring center. Ask about that just in case you need that little extra help. Sometimes we all need that little extra help. Ask if there's a tutoring center. Ask about the hours. Ask about the process. Maybe you have to sign up online, make an appointment, or maybe it's by classes. Um, but also make sure during these times that you are taking advantage of those virtual tours. Maybe they're not ideal because you don't get the same sense as you would if you were at a actual live campus. But you do get to see the facilities. You do get to see kind of if you are planning on, or if it's just possible for you to take a virtual tour and not take a in-person tour. Maybe it'll give you a sense of like what's on campus, how it might feel like. Also ask, and this doesn't have to be like a tour guide or while you're taking a virtual tour. This can be you reach out to the admissions rep, asking if there's going to be like if they're hosting like a virtual hangout for you to talk to actual students who attended the school, and kind of got to live out the experience. If once this is over and campuses start opening up, maybe you were planning a tour to a big school outside of the state, and maybe that's not something that is possible anymore. So, depending on your situation, maybe take a tour at a big campus in your state or nearby. So that you could get a sense of what just a big campus feels like. It might not be the campus that you were planning on visiting, but it will give you that sense of what a big campus feels like, what a lecture hall feels like. So just making small changes It might not be ideal, but you'll still get the experience, and you'll still get some sense of it. And then lastly, again, I might have not taken a tour, but now I try to take my nephew and nieces to some college tours just so that they get a sense, and they come back with a ton of questions. So if I imagine that my little nephew and nieces can come back with a ton of questions for me, I would imagine that you guys would too. Like Megan said, don't get overwhelmed. Even if it's the first time, even if you don't have any questions the first time, maybe it'll prompt you to come up with questions for the second time. And then just a reminder, you can just reach out to admissions or check out their pages. And once there are hosting any tours, it'll talk about the process on how to schedule them or how to join them if they are just kind of like a bigger tour as well.
Yeah, one more thing before we get off. So the National Association for College Admissions Counseling actually has an admissions tool where you can look up to see what institutions are offering virtual tours. So that's one way if you're like, okay, I want to look at all these schools and I have to go through each institution's website to see if they're offering. You can use the NACAC tool and see if the institution in one way, in one whole place, is offering a virtual tour during this time. We
And
thank
we
you.
will link it down below too.
Yeah, definitely. We do thank you for joining us today. So we will see you next week at 10 a.m. Next week's topic is timeline, admissions timeline, and senior year timeline. What junior students and parents right now can be doing as they prep for their senior year.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.